It's not a lot.
Yeah, no, it's fine. If you're wanting budget, he'll be priming
He's going to do the budget.
most of it. If you want to put it between us, that's
Sure.
fine, but he'll do.
You think? Yeah, me too. Me too. Okay. All right, I have 6 o'clock.
6 o'clock.
All right, good evening. I appreciate each of you staying and being here with us today. This is the regular meeting of the School District of Oconee County Board of Trustees on this Monday, April 15th at 6 o'clock p.m. We are very privileged to be here at this lovely Seneca Middle School where we cut the ribbon tonight, and it's just been a good day so far for the school district. At this time, we will have a moment of silence that I ask you to participate in if you'd like to. Amen. And now, if you will stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance. That way. Attention, salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, tonight on the approval of the agenda, there was one item that was left off, so before we approve, I would like to ask that we amend the agenda to include, under the discussion section, which is section 7, a discussion of substitute pay. Can I have a motion to amend the agenda to include discussion of substitute pay? Okay. I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor? All right, with that, I'll go ahead and ask for an approval of the agenda with the amended section added under discussion 7, substitute pay. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All right, all in favor? All right, that is taken care of. We have an amended agenda then. We have a special recognition now, and I'm going to let Dr. Thorsland talk a little bit about what is happening at Seneca Middle School.
Thank you, Ms. McCormick. And we are here at the new Seneca Middle School, and we're going to honor the library staff here at Seneca Middle School. That's funny to say here, but at Seneca Middle School in the old building right now. But the South Carolina Association of School Librarians is a statewide organization made up of school librarians from around the state, and each year they select an outstanding library. And this year, Seneca Middle School was named the outstanding library in the state of South Carolina. And we are very proud of Ms. Moore. She's here with us tonight. She is the librarian at Seneca Middle School, and her assistant, Leanne Stevens, is with her. And Dr. Corey's here as well. So we would just like to publicly acknowledge this award And I would just like to say it's well-deserved. There is not a person in the state of South Carolina who is as passionate about reading as Ms. Moore. And she does a great job. I was here at the other building a month and a half ago maybe for a reading circle that she does with her students, and they were standing up sharing ideas about books they had read, and she just does an outstanding job promoting the skill and desire to read. And she does a great job. So this is a very well-deserved award, and we would love for all of you to come up and take a picture with the school board so we can put it on our website if y'all don't mind. And we have here, this is from the South Carolina House of Representatives, a resolution honoring the Seneca, Ms. Moore in the Seneca Library. So I think if y'all could come back here, we're going to do it on the steps so we can make sure to see everybody. And Ms. Dodd will come take a picture. She's already over there. Maybe the board can stand behind y'all and y'all can hold your resolution. Can we do that? I'll stand right here at the front. And we'll let Ms. Dodd place you if we need to move anybody.
Mr. Herring, over that way just a little. Dr. Kinnaman, will you come down one more? That's a good picture right there. And then I'm going to zoom way out because the way our website is, we need a little extra space. Thank you so much. Great. Thank you.
I think we all need to read more, and I really appreciate all that you do to instill that love in our students. So important. And at this time, I think we have one person for public comment.
You'll make a mistake on 4 minutes. I'll see you when you hear this. Don't look at me. Think we. I'm here for everybody, a lot of people, citizens of Oconee County, no matter their gender or their age. One topic: banned school activities, sports on Wednesdays. No practice, no games. That's what we're going to talk about. Now, here we go. On the one hand, we have sports. Sports create good quality in life. You learn. Temporary. Over here, Teen Jesus could be permanent, eternity. Could give people the impetus to handle life, not let life handle them. Okay, that's it. Other hand, Teen Christ. We have the choice to learn to handle life, the pressure that you put on people. We don't require a church. We're not talking about requiring anybody to go to church. That's a choice. But what we're talking about here is the pressure of the choice. You either play or practice, or the coach will say, you're not on this team. You can't play. That's what they were doing. That's the pressure that you're putting on students. They have to make a decision. That's not right. Now, they may want to go to church, but they've got to play, they want to play ball. What do they do? Okay, all right, victims. We're innocent victims and been consumed by this practice. In the past, in the present. It stops now. It's going to stop. Okay, one day out of a practice session. We're innocent victims. I'll give you an example. Good Friday. Good Friday. A softball team practiced that morning. No school. That afternoon, a scheduled game with another high school on Good Friday. Now, Sunday, I talked to the parents. The conversation came up. We don't like it, they said. But what do we do? What do we do? I've got an answer for them. Give you another example. This past weekend, our softball team played a doubleheader, didn't have to play it because it was a non-conference game. They're going to beat the socks off this team. No, those 2 games went any extra, the whole innings, because of the mercy rule. They were so far ahead, after 5 innings, the games quit. A youth minister at the church, that church had that day a lock-in at church. Started at 5. Devotional, inspiration, a speaker, dinner, games, and then a lock-in. They spend the night. The youth leader asked the coach, can those players come early, 1 or 2 innings, and come to our lock-in so they don't miss the devotional? You know what the coach said? No. I need those players on my team. We need to win. Now, don't blame or judge the coach or the parent. Okay, 4 minutes. This is crazy. This is crazy when I talk about this. I'm a group. I get 10 minutes. I know your rules. Listen to your mission statement. And I apologize. Listen to your mission statement. Partner with families to develop responsible, productive citizens who are long life learners. The vision, to be your vision, to be an exemplary example of educational community that inspires and equips students to reach their highest potential. But most important, listen to this. Your code of ethics. What's the very first thing? Listen to this. Always thinking of children first. Children first is highlighted there. Okay? So that's your vision. We're going to band it. I've got just a few minutes. See? I got just a few minutes. You're pressuring the hell out of me. Excuse my language. And I'm going to tell you something. This past weekend, front page, level up. You were a speaker at that event. I could give you quotes that Mrs. McBride and Mrs. Brock said. I will say this. Let me give you a quote that Mrs. Brock said. Not one person is thinking about tomorrow. All of you are thinking about next week, next month, next year. I personally like to think about my children and their future. What did you tell your children when they came to you and said, Mama, Daddy, I'm going to go play softball, but I want to go to church? What'd I do? What did you tell your parents? What did you tell, as a parent, what did you tell your children? What example is that? What model is that? And here's the answer. One night, one of you 5 people is going to be woken up in the middle of the night, and you're going to say, hey, I'm going to Walla Halla, South Carolina, the district office on May 20th, the next board meeting, and I'm going to make a motion. Band, sports, activity, all practice, all game, 1 day a week. You know what? You're going to hit a second. It's going to pass, and I'll say 3-2. Now, 3 significant. District 2, District 4, District 5, you're not going to be on the board much longer. Possibility. There's a possibility you won't be on the board anymore. What an impact you could make. If you make a decision on May 20th to do this, you'll be a model. You'll be the leader. You'll step out of your comfort zone. Didn't you say that? Comfort zone. You won't follow the world. You see what I'm talking about? You won't follow the world. You'll do something that's right. Yes, change is going to be hard. Remember the veterans? Good cause. They gave their life. They were wounded. They died. Sacrificed for the right of us to have what we have today. Freedom. That was a good cause. Now, every board member wants justification or reasons of why you voted yes or no to tell your constituents. That's all you ask for, isn't it? Okay, all you ask for. My father was on the board for 12 years. I was on the board for 4. I know what you're doing, Drew. It's not about self-gratification. It's about helping students. And it's about parents. Take the decision away from them. Blue laws. You didn't make that decision, but you adhered to it. Go into a bank and have to have seats at the bank personally. You go on a Saturday. Because you know you gotta go, you don't go on Saturday, you gotta go Monday through Friday. You didn't make that rule, but you adhere to it. If you ban sports, parents and kids do not have to make a choice. One day. And I'm closing. And I'll ask you this. If you want to go to church on the drive to and the drive back, wouldn't it be great to know that a ball field is empty? Empty. Aren't you tired of seeing that happening? Aren't you tired of it? Step to the plate. I'm the public. We're the public. We don't have the right to do this. You do. It's in your, what a footprint you can make. What a footprint. What a legacy. You've been on the board more than once. You've been on the board more than once. You've been on the board a long time. Make a legacy. Do what's right. Your ethics. Think always of children first. Now, I've left you with a question. We've left you with a comment. We could protest. We could show a big thing. No, we're asking. And we're going to make a gesture right now to you. Anybody out here that agrees with me, stand up. Stand up. What are you sitting on your hands for? Stand up.
Sir,
See, they're not doing it. I am. I'm going to stand up.
Your 10 minutes
All right.
is up. We appreciate your comment.
May 20th. You better get there early at that meeting because the parking spaces are going to be limited because a lot of people are going to hear about this. They're going to see it. You better get there early.
Thank you.
Standing room only at that meeting. Standing room only. If you don't do it May 20th, you'll never get to, nothing's going to help this. No prayer, hope, it's not working.
Thank you.
Nothing.
All right. There are no more. Okay. Thank you. All right. At this time, each of you have had the minutes from the March 18th, 2024 regular session meeting. Did anybody see anything that needed to be changed? All right. Then the minutes from the March 18th, 2024 work and regular session meeting will be approved with no objection. And at this time, Dr. Thorsland has a superintendent's report for us.
Yeah, just a couple of things. And we're a little bit limited. I'd hoped to have some pictures and things for this, but with being in a new building where we don't have everything set up quite yet, I don't have the visual aids, but I did want to mention School Library Month. Our school librarians play a very, very important role, and it was appropriate that we honor Seneca Middle School's library here tonight, but April is School Library Month, and we have Jenny Clay here with us. Any other librarians? Miss Moore? Oh, okay, yes, back in the back. Good. Thank you all for being here, and we appreciate what our librarians do to promote reading in our schools, and I just wanted to acknowledge them and the hard work they do. They meet together as a group of librarians several times during the year, and just play a very important role with literacy in our schools, and we wanted to thank them. I also wanted to mention Special Olympics. That was held on Friday, so while we were here for the State of Oconee event, Special Olympics was happening at SWU, Southern Wesleyan University. I do want to publicly thank Southern Wesleyan for providing a venue for that. For several years, the Special Olympics took place at Clemson, and then the pandemic came and it kind of shut down, and there was no venue, so that schools were doing individual school Special Olympics at their site. But there's something special about having all the students converge into one location, and the Pickens County schools and Oconee County schools met at Southern Wesleyan. I did run by there and saw the opening ceremonies before coming here on Friday, and that is just a special, special event. No pun intended with the name, but it is just fun to watch. And the joy, the excitement on our students' faces as they, I got to watch them march around for the opening ceremonies. One of our students lit the torch, and just a really neat event, and I want to thank SWU for hosting that event for the second year in a row. And then the other thing I wanted to mention as part of my report tonight is just the testing calendar, and I believe in your folder you have a testing calendar. It looks like this. Just to remind everyone that it's an extremely important 3 or 4 weeks coming up, that our students will be faced with a lot of high-stakes testing. Kind of the culmination of the year are the end-of-course tests, the SC Ready, AP tests for our high schools. So this gives you some dates that our students will be busy at work and showing hopefully what they've learned all year and improving our scores over last year. But this is kind of what we're faced with. You see late April in some cases, but certainly early May, the testing starts in a very, very big way. So just wanted to make you aware of that, and that's really all I have tonight.
Great. Very good.
And then we have the addition.
The addition, absolutely.
For this. So you have also this page here that Mr. Schickling put together, and he has done some investigation when the question came up about the pay for subs, and I'm going to let him share a little bit of information, and then of course if you have questions and need further information, we'll get that.
Sure. So we've had a conversation about moving towards a service called Kelly Services, and at one point in the budget, we did do I need a microphone? Okay. Better? Okay. At one point, we actually made a transfer within the budget to remove appropriations from budget codes for salaries and benefits and move them to purchase services. So our relationship with Kelly Services is think of it as a modern staffing agency that specializes in education. They, by our accounts, by our experience, and I recognize some folks here that were at the parent advisory meeting last week too, and we shared this information, have been successful in growing our pool of available substitutes. So, part of the question was that when we give our board reports, there's fairly substantial checks being cut or expenditure items being paid to Kelly Services. And so it's a prudent question to analyze that, and is this an investment that's worthwhile for the district? So what I've prepared, and actually what I want to thank our payroll specialist, Tracy Hamilton, because she did the research to pull the numbers, was the total sub cost over the course of the last 3 years. And because that's a total dollar figure, it's very difficult to look at that dollar figure and determine, well, what is the cost per sub? Because sometimes it's a long-term sub, sometimes it's a specialty position, sometimes it's a one-day, and at the same time, to become more competitive between the 21-22 and 22-23 year, the district increased its daily sub rate because we were finding that subs were choosing other contiguous districts to go sub in. So you can see that there was an increase in cost. There also is an increase in vacancies. And so again, we believe that the new paid parental leave at the state level has some implications for us there. We believe that that's driven some vacancies. I don't have hard dollars on what that has cost us as a policy, because that's a lot to disaggregate. But I do believe, and I think Mr. Leroy would support that as well in his experience in the HR office, that has led to increased vacancy. But when you take the number of sub days as a denominator and look at that cost to what we've paid Kelly Services so far this year, divide that by the sub days, you can compare that to the daily cost per securing a sub in past years. And so, there are some things that don't make maybe every one of these numbers apples to apples. But I think in our estimation from a managerial standpoint, we can say that it's certainly not costing us more to secure subs. It appears that as a cost per day, it's costing us less. Although, there can be compounding factors, but I believe, and I think our leadership believes, that it's been a prudent investment. And one of the things that is a cost avoidance for the district is Kelly Services has to secure the workers' compensation. They're responsible for the benefits. They may be able to do that at more advantageous rates than we can as a public entity. So we believe that that's where their introduction of cost avoidance comes in. But I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. This is just our best effort at quantifying what that cost means for an apples-to-apples comparison year over year.
And we're happy to get specific questions if there's more information sought. It will be easier for us at the end of this year to evaluate the full year, but we don't think we're spending more. One thing that Mr. Schickling shared with me is in the past, when we've had subs as our own employees, it just shows up as salary. So it definitely is more eye-catching now in the budget information that you get, because you see those checks going to Kelly, whereas in the past, it would just kind of be hidden in salaries. It wasn't disaggregated from everybody else's salary. But we don't feel like it's a substantial amount more. Now, as they pulled this, it did make me think maybe we need to encourage our employees top to bottom to maybe not miss so many days. We've missed more days since the pandemic. Those days have gone up, and that's not. And I hadn't really even thought about it, but I guess the pandemic, some of the days were they were e-learning, so we weren't even in school some of those days. So that could account for some of the difference too. But the bottom line is we still feel like Kelly Services is providing a good service to our district.
Does anybody have any more questions right now with this?
No, thank you for getting that together.
Okay.
My pleasure.
All right. Thank you so much. All right, Dr. Thorsland, our June
Yes.
retreat date?
I understand we may need to change the June 10th date. And if we kept it on a Monday, we could go June 3rd or June 17th. There's really no reason we have to stay on a Monday other than just consistency. And typically the board retreat, we have met early to mid-afternoon and had 2 or 3 hours of just sharing information from our different departments, various topics for that, followed by a board meeting at 6 o'clock. So we're happy to accommodate whatever is the will of the board with that.
You're good on the 10th. She's good with the 10th.
Okay.
Not the 10th. Not the 3rd or the 3rd or the 17th. Okay.
I'm good with either of those.
I am too. On 17th
17th seems to be more in line
with our board
with our
meeting.
board meeting.
17th,
Does anyone have
and that
17th?
may be final reading of the board budget. The only issue if that would be after we go to county council. Let's check the county council schedule. We wouldn't want you doing third reading of the budget after council had done third reading.
The county's final reading is on June 18th.
18th, so the 17th would be fine.
All right,
You need a motion?
I don't, well,
I think that we probably would need
Yeah,
you to
okay.
officially change that since you did approve the board meeting dates prior.
All right, Madam Chairman, I propose that we move the June 10th meeting to June 17th.
second? Okay. Is there any more discussion? All in favor? All right. So we will amend our school board meetings to the board retreat and combined meeting on Monday, June 17th. All right, Mr. Hamby.
Yes, so as we have been going through and getting some new chairs and things for our schools, we have a little bit of a surplus of used, some gently used, some we're just gonna throw away because they're in duct tape and keep them together. But we don't have enough space for all of them, we really don't have the need for as many as we have that are still in usable shape. So someone had reached out to Shannon Gibson and procurement and asked about them. They're a nonprofit. I thought I would bring it to the board to see if a nonprofit approaches us about getting a number of those, rather than having to store them, do something with them, that we accommodate them, as long as it's a reasonable request. I mean, not, don't get 400, but, yeah, we probably have 250 in there that we could give rid of. Just ask for permission to be able to do that.
Okay. You vote on that?
We would need a vote on that because
School property.
it goes contrary to what our procurement code would allow for. So it does take a board vote to do something that's not allowed by procurement code. It's legal for you to do it, it's just not legal for Mr. Hamby or me to make that decision.
All right, do I have a motion that we donate up to 250 used chairs to a charitable organization?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Any more discussion? All in favor? Okay. All right. That is good. And now, our next action item is our FY general fund budget, which we were going to hear from Jay Schickling.
Okay, I don't like to be the center of attention often, but I will do my best to work through what is a very complex subject, which is public fund accounting and school budgets. So the overview of today's presentation, which board members have a copy of this, is the state budget's legislation, or the state's budget legislation. They are reconfiguring the teacher salary pretty drastically with some radical movements. We'll talk about what that means. We'll talk about compensation analysis with our district versus some of our contiguous counterparts. And then we'll talk about the budget and the tax levy history with Oconee County, and our budget projection, and really that should say projections, because we will kind of outlay a couple scenarios for the board's consideration or discussion and determine which of those scenarios we'd like to move forward with based upon our intents here. So the first slide covers a presentation that was given by Mr. Rainwater at the Fiscal Affairs Office. So he works very closely with the legislature and the governor. And, you know, we're aware of the articulated intent at the state level to increase the starting teacher's salary to a certain amount over the course of time. The state has done some analysis on our teacher shortage and that phenomenon and what's causing it. So the analysis or their conclusion is that there's a great amount of teacher burnout in the first few years of the career. So folks go through their preparatory years, they do their student teaching, they get into the career, and they find that for whatever reason, that's not what they saw themselves doing and exit the career. So the state's goal is to direct more of the funding or the compensation to teachers early in their career, to try to attract them into that preparatory practice, that college program, and then keep them in the profession through that time period. And so and I apologize just because of the circumstances, we don't have the presentation up on the screen, but what the state would tend to, or intend to do with their salary schedule, number one is add add several years of experience. The current schedule had 23 years. This one would go to 28. Our school district already has 27. So in order for us to be compliant with the schedule, we would add a 28th. You can see that, or board members can see that the bachelor's column would have the starting salary increase by $4,500 for a teacher entering the profession. And by year 5, that increase year over year for a teacher would be $5,700 or close to it. And then that would taper itself down over the course of that bachelor's career to an end point of, again, $4,400 by year 28. So again, those are radical adjustments to the schedule. As you can move across the scale to different levels of higher education, you see that those numbers begin to taper themselves. In the master's column, we've got nearly half of our staff with a master's degree in the teaching component of our staff. You can see that would be a $3,400 increase at the entry level, $4,500 by year 5, $2,800 by year 10. And then by the time you reach the doctorate, the increase at the entry level would be $424. And you see several lines in there that are in the 3 figures of 400, 500, 200, something like that. Initially, the approach of the district in thinking about how we would want to handle this, because this is picking a lot of winners and losers, would be to make our best effort to take what our local supplement is. So whatever amount we are over that state schedule for whatever teacher you are, and apply that exactly to this schedule. Then the district is not picking winners and losers. We are just adhering to what the state's intent is. The issue with that is that the state of South Carolina calculates the aid on a formula, and the formula uses a master's degree with 12 years experience. Not all of our teachers are masters with 12 years of experience, so the composition of our staff puts the majority of our staff in the columns and the cells that would experience the most accelerated growth. And because of that, the state's projected classroom aid figures would come nowhere close to funding this effort in our circumstance, and I would estimate the circumstance of the majority of the school districts in the state. And nowhere close means not even halfway, probably. Initially, I was more optimistic about what our state aid projections would look like. So every time there is a state budget considered, once it leaves the legislature, our state finance department will run calculations for districts based on their attendance, based on their student composition, based on wealth metrics and taxpayer ability, and then they will project what school districts would stand to get out of that. Last year, there were similar numbers in the increase in state aid at the state level. We would have collected 10 to 15%, I think, more than we would this year from the state numbers. So the numbers are very underwhelming. And then on Friday, we all received a bulletin that from the House version to the Senate version, the Senate was actually removing $30 million of funds, which would constitute about 10% or so of the total spending on education. So the next thing we'll get into is, well, what does our compensation look like? If we're talking about a district that's 90% staff and these adjustments to salary scales, what does our current compensation look like? And we did this practice last year and compared ourselves to contiguous districts in the area. So the first step, or the first slide, is the teacher's master's degree. We are very close to the starting average for contiguous districts. As you work your way up through levels of experience, we are nipping at the heels a little bit. We're slightly below average of our contiguous districts. But from years 5 to 15, you can see we're actually the lowest, and then we make some ground up at the higher end of the scale. So, in talking about what our ambitions are for the staff that educate our students, we're looking at that. We made some very concerted efforts last year to try to make ground on salary scales, and still our counterparts seem to have been as aggressive or more aggressive. When you look at the next one is a custodian, again, we're above the average when you look at years 10 through 25, and in the composition of our staff, most of our staff would fall in those higher levels of experience. But in terms of attracting people into the profession or having attractive job postings, from years 0 to 5, we're the lowest in the region. And for a bus driver, again, we're the lowest across the scale. Now, we again made some very concerted efforts. We gave, I think, a $2.28 increase to every driver last year per hour, and still this is where we find ourselves in comparison. So this is in recognition of the work that we're trying to do. And the next slide then gets into our relationship with the county and our economic environment here in Oconee County. So there are 5 school districts listed on this table. These are the 5 school districts with the lowest operations millage rate. And so school districts have a millage or a tax, think of it as a tax levy for their general fund budget, their operations. They have a tax levy for their bond collection and their capital improvements. This is only looking at the operations. But we are and have been in the lowest 5 in the state out of now 71 districts. Our neighbors there are Pickens County, Horry, Georgetown, and Colleton. So, aside from Pickens County, where you've got Clemson University and some Lake Hartwell, you can see that Georgetown and Horry are lakefront, high-value commercial property. Oceanfront. High-value commercial property. I'm thinking in our terms about the lakes still. But that's our peer group in terms of our tax effort. Now, in the year end of fiscal year 2020, our millage rate was 116 points. That dropped to 115.7 for the next 2 consecutive years. And in fiscal year 23, it dropped to 111.6, and in fiscal year 24, it dropped to 108.6. I think it's worth noting that our neighbors in Pickens County had 1 increase over that time in fiscal year 22, going from 108.9 to 110, and then remaining flat. And Georgetown, throughout that course, went up nearly 4 points between 21 and 22, and then another 2 points between 23 and 24. So the trend of our counterparts is to remain stable or increase, and our trend has been to decrease by a substantial amount. So that drop over the course of time by our current millage rate would account for nearly $4 million, probably the high $3 million in terms of annual revenue for us. The next slide shows how much ad valorem collections have been remitted to the school district. So in fiscal year 22, there's a little bit of an anomaly or an outlier that we talked about when there was an assessment valuation with Duke that was settled. So that was included there, but there was nearly $51 million collected in fiscal year 2022. 50,500,000 or so, it's about 50.5 million in 23. And to date, as of the last time we saw our county collections, so this would be through February, we had collected 49.5 million. So our budget for ad valorem taxes for this year is 49.7. We've nearly generated that through February. Our estimate, and again, I'm not in the finance office across the street. I'm not the county auditor, so I can't tell you the exact permutations of what we are going to see for the rest of the year. But we believe it's a fair guess that if the March through June collections were similar to prior years, we could see collections up to 53 million. That in that time period has shown the total, the millage rate is a function of assessment values. And so assessment values in 2021 were up 6.25%. In 2022, they were up 7.12%, and in 23, they were up 10.93%, so almost 11%. Again, that's a gradually increasing trend line. So part of that is responsible for the decrease in millage. But as a district, I believe it's been our governing philosophy or goal to not ask for increases and live modestly, but also capture the growth of the millage. And so I think from the leadership's perspective here, maybe we have not been doing that to the level we should be doing over the past maybe year or two. And so we're considering a request that would seek to do that. Certainly not ask to drastically increase anything, but would capture some of that growth and at least remain a stable rather than these declines, which are, an outlier to our counterparts who are surpassing us in what they're willing to pay pay teachers and educators and bus drivers and everybody else. And so, I think the goal of a school district is to be fiscally responsible and educationally sound. And, I think we've demonstrated we are very fiscally responsible. I think that when you talk about educationally sound, if we can't compete for the quality staff that we would like to have in our classrooms, that begins to be the thing we need to focus on. So I've provided some detail to an initial proposed budget. This is the I think the low end or the comfort we would look at budget. If you look at, you can see here what the salary increases would be, what employee benefit increases would be, and then what the actual House projected budget would give us. We're looking at $2.7, $2.8 million in aid to classrooms to support what would cost $5 or $6 million in terms of salary increases if we carried out the state's intent. So the distance between those is striking. But our proposed budget would make efforts to close ground on our salaries in comparison to others. I think our concern is they'd have to be gradual efforts, not quite the ambitions that we set out with before seeing the initial numbers from the House and then the downward revisions from the Senate. By area of focus, I've laid it out a couple of different ways. I'm sorry, I should back up a slide when I was talking about growth assessment. So the current proposal that I've talked to you about would include a levy request at the county of $54,670,000. The rationale behind that is this year's levy in our budget, this year's request that was granted by the county with a 10% escalator, assuming that over the past 3 years, the levy has grown 6%, assessments have grown 6%, 7%, and 10%. So that would be our goal in capturing that growth. The other consideration that probably would, or definitely would allow us to take more aggressive steps towards some of the salary ambitions that we would have and competitiveness in that area would be to take our projection or our guess as to what we would be receiving this year from the county, which is in excess of what our budget is, and then add a 5% multiplier to that. And that would render a $55,650,000. And so the initial proposed budget went with that first 10% growth option, the lower of the two. And then what I've provided after that is both versions in their net dollar cost, or what the total budget would be. So I think the point of consideration for our board and for conversation is a more tapered approach. Still, 7.9%, as I understand it, reading the news, is about what Pickens County has put forth for their budget proposal. So, not out of the realm of what our peers are doing, but that would be the more graduated approach. And then version 2 would be the more aggressive approach. Again, it's not what I'm showing here in the data is that there are two trends happening. We're being outpaced by our competition, and our ability to generate revenue is not keeping up with that. Not at all political conversation, so I can't speak to what that would do exactly for the millage rate. I know that there is usually a desire here not to increase it. Our best guesses, although we don't sit in the chair, is that these efforts would not likely cause an increase. But again, we don't make that decision. And so, if rather than being the lowest in the state, if we were tied for the lowest in the state, I still think that reflects good stewardship of public funds. But the growth, as you can see in either case, is predominantly in staffing and instructional staffing, and more focused there than it is in the administrative staffing. And in the budget model that we've put together, the administrative staff would be seeing the lowest of any of the percentage increases, really trying to focus on the people that are out there doing the work with kids face to face. So,
One, administrative staffing does not mean school administrators. That is a much larger group of people than is.
yes.
That would include facilities employees and anything that's not
Yes.
directly teaching in the classroom. So I just don't
Yeah.
want anybody thinking that we're paying school administrators that kind of.
Yeah, to clarify that, even the differentiation is if you work in an instructional classroom. So if you are a teacher, if you are an aide, if you're a special ed teacher, predominantly that is instruction. Even your related services, so nurses, guidance counselors, psychologists, library media, those would all count as administrative expenditures. So,
And also custodians, facility
yes,
employees,
facility
anyone
specialists,
who's not
transportation.
a teacher in the classroom.
So anybody, yep. So that is, that number doesn't necessarily represent the central office or main office in a building administration only, certainly. So the next steps for us, I think, are to invite the board for their consideration or commentary on what has been presented here. I'm happy to answer questions about long-term implications, fund balance. I think this effort would be, we finished the years in the past with surplus. I believe we'll finish this year with surplus. Surplus indicates health. We have a board policy to maintain a certain amount of fund balance. When your budget grows 8%, 7%, 9%, you have to generate a certain amount of surplus simply to stay flat on your fund balance. So if you're not doing that, you're falling behind. So we have to be very careful. I think what we're trying to do here is remain as competitive as we can, capture some growth, but also not find ourselves digging a hole where we've got to put that dirt back before we can stand on it and continue to move forward. So the next thing that we'll be waiting for is the formal revised projections from the Senate. We haven't seen what that really means for us. Don't know if that's going to change any of our considerations. Every indication is that if it did, it would lead to reduced state support. But of course, then the Senate and the House will have to work that out, and we don't know what the outcome will be. The final iteration of our teacher and bus driver salary scales based upon what our ambitions are, what we think that we're willing to go across the street and ask for, and then continued macroeconomic updates. I mean, I saw at the end of last week, quote unquote, power or super core inflation is continuing to trend above where we thought it would. The Fed is going to delay interest rate reductions. So, that's concerning from our non-personnel standpoint is those costs for energy, utilities, maintenance items are going to continue to escalate on us, and we only have so much capacity to be able to fund those as well. So that's in a nutshell the best I can do to iterate a whole lot of information. I'm happy to answer any questions for you.
It's a lot of information.
If I could comment just on a couple of
Please.
things, just to maybe reemphasize some of the things that Mr. Schickling shared. I do think that these three charts that show our salary comparison, and I want to make sure people in the audience know too, we've taken the stance that we want to compare our salaries to the two neighboring counties, Pickens and Anderson, that represent 7 school districts. And we feel like that's our competition, if you will, because we're competing for employees. We have vacancies in our schools right now, and we're trying to hire new employees for those vacancies. We compete against Pickens and the Anderson districts. So we compare our salaries to the Pickens and Anderson districts. This does not include Greenville. If it included Greenville, we'd look a whole lot worse. If it included some of the, Horry, Charleston, I read something in e-clippings today that said Charleston is considering $58,000 for a first-year teacher. I mean, that's not even comparing ourselves to them. That's just Anderson and Pickens. But if you look, we're at our line, the dark blue line, is kind of at the bottom, and we don't want to be at the bottom. We don't want to be necessarily head and shoulders above the 6 other districts in our 3 counties, but we want to be competitive. So when we see this last column that Mr. Schickling has where it says SDOC to average of the 7 districts, that needs to be flat or slightly above in my way of thinking. And we're not there. So we want to get there. And the way we feel like we can get there, because his version 1, it doesn't reach those teacher salary schedule changes that the state is adding to the state minimum salary schedule. And I'm afraid that without us knowing exactly what the other 6 districts are doing in our area, that even with the changes, we would still be towards the bottom of that chart. And we don't want to be at the bottom. We want to be competitive. We want to be able to tell all of our employees, top to bottom, teachers, custodians, bus drivers, whoever, whatever group of employees it is, we want it to be competitive in our area. So that's one thing I wanted to point out. The other thing is, this is a first reading, but it's our first chance. Based on what you decide tonight, Mr. Schickling and I will go to County Council tomorrow and present the budget for the first time over there. It would be my wish that we would look at version 2, not version 1, because version 2 is going to give Mr. Schickling the flexibility to get closer to those salary targets that we feel like we need. And while this may seem a thin packet for such a large budget, when Mr. Schickling said 90% of our budget is salaries. So you can look at our allocation sheet, how many teachers go to each school. That's 90% of our budget. It's a small chart that affects a huge budget. A lot of the other costs are just, they're going to be what they are. The utility costs for all of our buildings. We shared Friday 2.4 million square feet of building. Well, the utilities to run those buildings, those are a fixed cost that we really don't have a lot of flexibility in. The power bill is what the power bill is, and we have to pay it. So anyway, the flexible part of our budget is salaries and staffing. And
in addition to what you said, there is a teacher shortage.
there is.
And it is very hard to get teachers. We need to be in a very competitive situation so that if we are competing with Anderson and Pickens and Greenville as well. So we need to keep that in mind in developing this schedule. But let me ask you a question. Are we still looking at 108.6 million?
Well, see, that's where we don't have control over that.
Sure. Yeah, and, there are so many computations that go into whatever, I'm not an expert on how the mill is calculated. What I can and have shown, I think, in this presentation is that in 1 year we went out and asked for 1.8 million in addition to what a 1.8 million increase. That led to a 4-point drop. Then we asked for a 2.2, 2.3 something million increase. That led to a 3-point drop. So our requests have not been maybe aggressive enough to hold the mill stable, and that is what our governing body is able to control, is what that request is. So while that may be a striking number in one instance in time, if you're recapturing, there's going to be continued growth moving forward, and it's accelerating. So, a more aggressive request may just not lead to a drop, or, it may be an increase of a point, but I'm not able to, with enough accuracy, tell you what that outcome would be. And the assessments won't be set until, July, September. So that's when that becomes a final reality.
And our attempt to be very conservative and not see a millage increase has actually resulted in a decrease of 7.4 mills over the last 5 years, and we can't afford to keep going that direction, or our salaries are going to continue to be at the bottom of the 7 districts in our 3 counties.
I think we need to be conservative, but I don't think we need to be so conservative that we shoot ourselves in the foot.
Conservative
I agree.
and competitive, and we can achieve both.
And I'll just remind you, this is just first reading, we'll have other opportunities. But we do need to give them some indication when they go and present it tomorrow, how we feel. But you rather us vote at a dollar amount or a version?
Version is fine,
Okay.
either way, because
Okay.
they're the same.
Yeah, dollar amount is tied to the version.
Okay. So you see before you version 1 and version 2, and version 2 is a little more aggressive. Do I have a motion to approve?
If I can just say
Yes,
one more
you
thing.
certainly may.
If I'm correct, Mr. Shipley, correct me if I'm not, but I believe version 1 does not have us at $50,000 starting salary for teachers. Version 2 would allow that.
Yeah, that's correct, because the scales are built such that it's very difficult to adjust one part of a scale without needing to then address compression and distribute that movement throughout the rest of the scale.
So version 2 is the higher amount. Is
The
that
higher
correct?
It is, that's
amount.
correct.
So I'll make a motion that we, on first reading, approve version 2.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second to approve version 2. Is there any more discussion on that at this time? As I say, we'll have it a second reading and also a final reading, so we have some opportunities to make some more changes. If not, all in favor of approving version 2 of the budget? Okay. You have that. Thank you. Mrs. McDonald, are you going to policy IKA-R for us? We also need a first reading approval on that.
So back in March, I brought policy IKA-R to you guys to look at and introduce, and this, of course, is looking at the grading scale at the elementary level, where we would transition from having that ESNU to a MPN scale, with M being meets expectations, P being progressing toward expectations, and N being not meeting expectations. Just wanted to remind everyone that this was after meeting with teachers, getting their feedback, and seeing their input, and really having to bring that to fruition. Just reminding everybody that when we polled our K-2 teachers, 91.7% of those who responded, and there were 60 responses of K-2 teachers in our district that were in support of making this adjustment. And I knew in our last meeting, we also had a conversation around, maybe the angst about the E. One of the things that I went back and I talked with my colleagues with is whenever we look at the E on our current K-2 grading scale, at E, which the word is exemplary, but what it actually means is shows mastery of skill. And so in our practice, there's been some confusion around E, meaning exceeds, but E is actually for mastery of the skill. This new scale would really help parents understand that having an E does not necessarily mean your kid is above the rest or performing better than everyone else, but they are meeting expectations. It kind of helps us clearly communicate that to parents. Of course, we would encourage all of our teachers to continue to have those conversations with parents so that they can make sure they're fully aware of how their students are performing when they are above meeting those grade level expectations. And this, of course, would be another step to help further clarify that communication as students move into 3rd grade. Parents can kind of anticipate what those SC rating scores may look like because we're using some of that same language on that assessment as well. And if you look down in the second section there, this would also be our scale for our related arts teachers, where they would have that M, P, and N. Again, because they're currently using ESNU, even though for our 3 through 5 kids, they're getting numerical grades in their content classes, but in related arts, they were still getting that ESNU. And so it would shift those folks as well to that MPN scale so that we can have a unified report card that we're sending home so that page. And hopefully we're sending some clear communication, not only to parents, but also clarifying for our teachers exactly what we're grading and what we're communicating.
Are there any questions or comments on this?
So, if you do have students who actually do exceed and are exemplary, we're just not gonna say anything about them, we're just gonna put M?
It would be an M, and then our teachers would be having those communications directly with parents to let them know that their child is performing above grade level standards.
All right, if there are no other questions, then I'll ask for a motion to approve on first reading policy IKA-R grading assessment systems.
Madam Chair, I move to approve policy IKA-R grading assessment systems on first reading.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, is there any more discussion before we vote? All right, all in favor? All right, thank you very much. At this time, it is time for board member comments, and I would like to thank the librarians that came out tonight. We appreciate you so much. There is nothing more important than teaching a child and just letting them know how much reading means and let them experience the joy of reading. So we appreciate all that you do very, very much. You're very important, and we do want to thank you tonight for what you do.
And I want to echo that as well and just congratulate the Seneca community on
Absolutely.
a beautiful new school.
Yeah.
We do have, for those of you who get blind, we do have blinds that will be in there.
Oh. Okay.
Thinking I was glad I wasn't sitting over there.
I know.
Sorry about that.
It's going down. Anyway,
My list.
I would also like to say that it's always good to see members of the community
absolutely.
support education, and we appreciate each of you for coming month after month. We thank you for your attendance. And I would just also like to acknowledge we have a sorority here tonight. The ladies in red, the Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. We thank you for your presence. But again, thanks to everyone for being here.
Anything else?
I feel like I need to make a comment about our public comment. I spent a lot of time in that arena, and I can tell you that it's a hard decision when you're a playoff team about practicing on a Sunday afternoon. It's a hard decision on a Wednesday when the high school league demands that you make up games by a certain date, and then the weather puts you in a situation where you have to choose what days are available to you. Transportation plays a role in that, and I don't think that there is a coach in this county that would tell a kid that they could not go to church because they had to come to their practice. I can't imagine that we have a coach in this county that would say, in any capacity, that I wouldn't work with a youth minister to try to work out a way for the child to be at practice and attend the church event. I think that there's a lack of communication maybe among the community over the issue, and I would encourage anyone who doesn't understand those things to go to the school and meet with the coaching staff to see, because at no time would I have made or demanded that a player come to a practice instead of going to a church function. And there would have never been a punishment assigned to them for not being there. So I'm pretty confident that our coaches in this county adhere to that, and I just think it's a communication issue and not something that the board needs to develop a policy on. That's my opinion in this moment, but I just wanted to share that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Any other comments? Thank you. Well, at this time, I will entertain a motion to go into executive session for personnel items, employment recommendations and changes, and also professional contracts for the 2024-25 school year. All right,
Second.
I have lots of motions and seconds. All in favor? Great. And again, thank all of y'all for being out here tonight. We so appreciate it. And those of you from Seneca, the school is just beautiful, and I know you're going to enjoy it. Thank you.
yeah, just